Hi everyone, and welcome back to Stamp with Anna. And today I'm going to show you how I made this sympathy card. And this is one of my customer thank you notes. Like I mention all the time, I like to send my customers individualized thank you cards. And I use one of the products that they've purchased from me. That way they have an idea of how to use it, or a different idea on what to make with it. And a few months ago, I think it was, I had a class, a virtual card class, and it was focused on neutrals and vellums. And this is one of the cards that we made. And we embossed vellum, this is embossed with an embossing folder, vellum, and we cut out a little frame. Now, because my classes are virtual, it doesn't include any stamping because I cannot include stamped images with my kits. So I wasn't able to show them how great you can heat emboss on vellum. So after this class, one of my customers ordered some vellum. So I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to show her how you can emboss on vellum. And so this card here is kind of like this one. It's a little different design, but this embossed is with white embossing powder, and this one is using an embossing folder. So I needed a sympathy card, so I thought I would make her one, and the one I'm going to make with you today is the one that I'm going to use for my purpose. So let's get started with this one. And I do like it for a sympathy card because it's soft seafoam, and I think it's just a nice peaceful color. So that's why I went with the soft seafoam. So my card, this one here was made like a book. It's 5.5 by 8.5 scored at 4 1/4, but the one I'm going to make with you today is 4 1/4 by 11 scored at 5.5. And there's no particular reason why I changed the orientation, simply because when I cut my paper, I cut it this way instead of the other way, by mistake, I might add. So that is my card base. Then the next thing I have is my frame. And I have a piece of, this is 4 1/4 by 5. And I'm going to make my frame out of this. And I want to show you how I made it. Usually I have all my die cutting done, but I thought I would show you exactly how I made this frame. And to do it, I used the rectangle stitch framelits. And this is a set of 13 rectangles. And they nest beautifully. And you have regular rectangles, you have narrower rectangles, and you have this little stubby guy. And I wanted to have a larger border on my frame. So I used this second to the largest and the fourth to the largest. I skipped the one in between there. If I had used that one, my frame would be about that wide. And because I've gone down an additional framelit, I get a larger frame. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I'm going to bring up my die cutting machine. And I have my magnetic plate and one acrylic plate, and then my seafoam green paper. And I'm just going to place these here. Now when you're doing this, you do want to make sure that the inside framelit is even on all sides, top, bottom, left, right, so that when you die cut it, your frame is equal. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to put my top plate in, and I'm going to run it through. Now, when I take my framelits off, that's the outside, the extra paper. I don't really need that, so I'm going to toss that. When I take my framelits off, I have a nice frame. I use these all the time. and you have that nice stitched edging. Now, I'm not going to use this one here, but I'm certainly not going to toss that. I keep this in my stash with other ones like this, sorted by color, and when I need a tag for something, or I need a mat for something, whether a card or I'm scrapbooking, I just go right there and grab that piece, and it's already got some nice dimension on it. So here is my frame, and I'm going to put that aside. Now I'm going to do my embossing. And I'm going to bring in a piece of scrap paper. I have my vellum, and this vellum is cut at 3 3/4 by 4 1/2. And with my Versamark ink, I'm going to use the stamp set Positive Thoughts. I'm going to use this greenery, this butterfly, and this Hugs, Prayers, and Love. I've already done my butterfly, and I've die cut it as well. I just didn't want to, just to save time. So there is my butterfly. I'm going to put that aside. But I did that the exact same way that I'm going to show you how I do this. So with my large greenery, I'm going to ink it up nicely with my Versamark ink. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is use my Emboss Buddy. Make sure that I remove all the static that's on my card. Now, if you don't emboss a lot, depending on the environment of your scrap room, your Versamark ink pad might dry up if it's a really hot room. I happen to have my studio in my basement, so it doesn't really dry out. But if I don't use it a lot, I find that it does need to be re-inked. So when you're buying Versamark, as with any stamp pad, always buy a re-inker. And it's so easy to forget that the Versamark needs to be re-inked, and you really don't notice it until you go emboss something and you don't get a nice crisp color to it. So with my greenery, I'm going to come down the bottom here, the bottom right corner, and I'm going to just press that down. Okay, and you can't see it, I'm sure. And now I have the sentiment that says Hugs, Prayers, and Love. And I want to put that, you can see that I have it right up here. Now I have to be mindful, I can't come right up to here because I have to be mindful that I have this frame there. So I'm going to ink that up again with my Versamark. And I know you can't see this underneath there, but I'm going to come like right above the center, kind of towards the center. Make sure I have it up the right way. And I'm going to just stamp it right there. Okay. And now we just have to emboss. I'm going to sprinkle some white embossing powder on my image. Tap it off. And if I see any strays with here's my thinner one, with a paintbrush, nice soft paintbrush, I'm just going to very carefully remove any stray powder. As if I don't remove that, when I emboss, I'm going to end up with little dots. And you do want to be careful when you're handling your paper that you don't put your hand on your embossed image. Okay, so that looks good. I'm just going to move this out of the way, put it back in my jar. Embossing powder goes such a long way. Now this is vellum. It's a vellum cardstock. Stampin' Up! Does make a great vellum cardstock. It's nice. It's a nice thick weight, but it is vellum, so you do have to keep that in mind. You can very, very easily scorch this. So I'm going to always keep my heat gun going round and round, and I'm going to just show you a little bit how it melts, and then I'll do the rest of it off camera so you don't have to watch it. It does go quickly, but still. Okay, see how it's melting? And I don't want to keep it on any one spot too long because you can burn it. I'm just going to keep moving it. All right, I'm going to go off camera and I'll be back when this is all done. Okay, I'm done embossing, and isn't that beautiful? You can see a little bit of a shine to it. So now I want to attach that to my my frame. And for that, I'm going to bring in my silicone pad. I do want to just brush off some stray embossing powder from my last project. Okay, so now I want to attach this frame like this. Now I've cut the embossing, the vellum almost to size. See how it's almost to size, not quite? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use liquid glue, and on the back side of my frame, I'm going to apply a thin bead, and I'm going to apply that as close to the edge as I can without having it squeeze out of the edge and onto the front of my card. So it's a nice thin bead. And now I'm going to attach, I'm going to put my embossed piece there. And I'm just going to hover over it until I get it nice and straight and where I want it to be. And I think that works for me. And now I'm just going to press where I put that glue. Okay. Now the back side, it might not be straight because of the way I laid it down, but that's fine. And if I was skewed a little and there's a tiny bit showing on off the edge, you just go back and snip that with your scissors. Now I want to attach this here. I want to give the card a little bit of a lift. So I'm going to use dimensionals. I'm not going to, let me rephrase that. I'm not going to use Stampin' Dimensionals because if I do, because this is vellum and it's delicate, if I put a dimensional here and a dimensional here on all four corners, this part here is going to sink and be distorted. So I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to bring in my foam strips. Okay. And I'm going to just attach my foam strips on all four sides. So you are going to use a bit of foam strips. But I found that this is the best way to keep the frame from, like, for lack of a better word, for caving in. Now, another thing that you could do, and I'll show you that in just a second. You know how when you have your Stampin' Dimensionals, when you use all the dimensionals on the inside, you're always left with the outside borders. Those would be perfect for something like this. And I will show you that in just a second. Now, I didn't really have to do the whole side. I could have done a little strip here and a little strip there. It's not a problem, but since I had it in my hand, I decided to use it. So what I was saying about the dimensionals is, I'll open my case here. When you have a dimensional sheet and you're finished using all of your dimensionals, you'll see here, after these are gone, you have this little layer here. You could simply just use that, snip it like that long, and apply that on either side there. So never throw away your dimensional sheets until you have every last bit off. So now I'm just going to remove the backing. And now I'm going to apply that to the front of my card. I am going to stand up so I get a nice, there we go. Okay, now the last thing I want to put on the front of my card is my butterfly. Now, I'm going to just give my butterfly a little fold, gentle fold, so that its wings come up a little bit. And I'm going to put a little bit of liquid, I think I'm off camera, I'm sorry. I'm going to put a little bit of liquid glue right down his spine. And I'm going to attach him right there. Okay, and I'm just going to push that down just to give it a nice adhesion. Okay. And this is very simple, but I think it's just, I just love it. Now the last thing I'm going to do for stamping is I have a piece of basic white, and this is 4 by 5 1/4, and I do want to stamp something on the inside. So I'm going to use this Peaceful Moments, and I'm going to stamp with Deepest Sympathy. And I'm going to ink that up with my soft seafoam ink. Straight down, straight up. And with my Stampin' Seal, I'm going to apply that, attach that to the inside of my card. Now you'll notice on my sample card here, I have a ribbon up in that corner. And that ribbon comes from the Flowers for Every Season ribbon pack, and it was 3 of these, and I used this nice white cotton. And the reason, I'll be totally honest, that I put that there is because I had a little bend in my frame. When I put it on, somehow I bent it, and I didn't like the way it looked. So I added that there just to cover my bend. So here it is with the frame, and here it is without the frame. So whichever way you like it is the way you should make it. And if you have any questions at all about this project or any of the products I used, certainly contact me through my blog, www.stampwithanna.blogspot.com. And if you do not have a demonstrator with whom you work, certainly contact me, and I'll be glad to send you out a brand new annual catalog that just went live last week. And while you're here on my channel, if you enjoyed this project, I'd love it if you give me a thumbs up, and if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much, and I'll catch you back here later for another video.